All about biodiversity. Now, in case you're wondering why exactly we are focusing on biodiversity tonight, it is because today is International Biodiversity Day 2025. This year's theme, as I told you earlier on, is all about sustainability. And of course, I'm going to be giving you more details on my guest. I have former chairman, Friends of Karura, Professor Karanja Njoroge. With me, I have Caroline Jiru, who is Greater Rift Valley Landscape Manager, as well as Nelson Mwiru, the CEO of Kijabe Environmental Volunteers. They are with me in studio. Hello, Karibuni. How are you guys today?
Well, thank you for being here.
And happy International Biodiversity Day to all of you.
Thank you for having us. Yeah.
All right. So I'm going to start off with you, Prof. You know, we know what biodiversity is. And sometimes when people hear this complicated word, they struggle to understand what exactly it is. So maybe you can start off by just saying in layman's language, what exactly is biodiversity to you? And we can be as simple as possible so people get a better understanding.
Biodiversity can be best explained by looking at planet Earth and saying what makes the Earth become such a livable place for the human being. So for us as humans, we need to look at biodiversity as the plants, the animals, the insects, the trees, the water sources, and all the living organisms that live on planet Earth is what we call biodiversity. Those live in the soils, in water, on earth, on hills and in the lowlands and so on. I mean, if you can comprehend that and say that is what biodiversity is all about.
All right, now we'll move on to you, Caroline. You know, you are a landscape manager. And what exactly does Biodiversity Day mean to you professionally? And maybe you can also tell us a bit about what you do for better understanding as well, so that people can realize that, wow, this is something that I could possibly do in the future, because I don't know if this is a profession that is very well understood.
Thank you. I work with World Resources Institute. This is a global research organization that is working with communities to improve their lives, to protect nature, and also halt climate change. And when you talk about biodiversity, it's a variety of life on Earth, you know, looking at from the smallest insect, the bacteria, the fungi, going to the big species, the elephants, you know, the forests.
Yes.
All that is biodiversity. And what we are doing as an institution is we are working with communities, we are working with governments, you know, to be able to really preserve or conserve, restore the biodiversity. We are all aware the biodiversity loss, you know, generally in the world. Of course, there are pressures, you know, anthropogenic pressures, you know, from human activities. Of course, the population is growing and the Earth is not becoming big either. But again, how do we ensure we use our resources sustainably? You know, how do we ensure that the water we have used sustainably? You know, the forest, the species, how do we ensure that the communities are able to depend upon them? But again, with a futuristic mind, that tomorrow this resource is gonna be there and will be used even by people that will come the years to, you know, in future. So it is a whole holistic way of looking at it, because at the end of the day, it is that which maintains the balance and sustain life.
Yes.
Without biodiversity, we cannot have life. And that's why you're seeing even the issues with the zoonotic diseases and all that. It's because of the biodiversity loss.
Yes.
And we can only sustain life on Earth by taking care of biodiversity.
Okay.
So as an institution, this is an area that we are very keen at, but really working with communities at the local level to preserve and restore, you know, degraded lands. Yeah.
Okay, thank you for that. Nelson, how do you see the current state of biodiversity in Kenya?
Thank you. And I will look at that from where I come from. As a community member and as a conservation group, we look at biodiversity in its own, you know, how critical it is, the different species that we are talking about. And if you look at biodiversity, we have two terms in one: bio, meaning life, and diversity, meaning the many types of living things that we have. In Kenya, we have different actors that relate with biodiversity, and it is important to acknowledge the fact that we have generational changes. Since when we had the original biodiversity, for example, when I was born, whatever was existing then probably have changed to what it is today. And therefore, when I look at the current status in the country, I would tend to think that it is important to, keep on telling the story of what existed then and what is currently existing
now,
and how can everybody take part in conserving this and protecting whatever is remaining of whatever was there originally. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much for that. I'll get back to you, Prof. Karanja. Now, when we talk about biodiversity today and the state of biodiversity, not just in the country, but overall, globally as well, what are some of the threats that we think could really affect and really shift things when it comes to biodiversity? And these are things that need to be addressed immediately.
I think the greatest challenge for us in biodiversity is the restoration of vital landscapes. We have degraded our landscapes in such a way, both seascapes, landscapes,
yes,
our geographical sensitive places have all been degraded in a very rough way across the world. I mean, we are not just talking about Kenya.
Absolutely.
And the production of food, for example, has led us to destroy the very source of the food. We are destroying some of these biotic resources,
yes,
in order to produce. And we have then become beholden to using non-natural resources to grow our food. That's the biggest challenge that we have in terms of protection of biodiversity.
Okay.
The second one is water scarcity,
yeah,
because of degradation of the same landscapes. And I think that in Kenya particularly, we need to remember that in the East African area, Kenya is the least secure in terms of water. Perhaps you could say we can be comparable with Somalia, but even Somalia is much better given its population, But we are a water scarce country. We cannot match ourselves with Rwanda or Uganda or even Tanzania. What we need to do is to really be very focused in protecting water sources.
Yes.
And the late Professor Wangari Maathai mentioned water towers. She actually talked about them in the concept that it is Mount Kenya, the Aberdares, the Mau ecosystem, the Cheranganis, and Elgon, Mount Elgon, that are the source of water, yes, that we drink as Kenyans.
Yes.
How do we protect those ecosystems? That's the challenge.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay. And Caroline, as we talk about supporting biodiversity, what is something that you think needs to be done immediately, things that we need to really look into when it comes to coming up with solutions? When Prof has mentioned a few of the challenges and a few things that he believes are a key threat to biodiversity. Yeah. So what are some of the solutions to counter these threats?
Yeah, yes, Shiksha, I think one is really need to have everyone on board.
Yes.
No one should be left behind. When you look at the resources, we all depend on them. Talk about businesses. I mean, Kenya is a nature-based driven country in terms of businesses. We are there, for example, when you talk of Naivasha, the hoteliers are there because of that lake. That lake is surviving because of the Aberdares, which is a source, of the rivers that are flowing into that lake.
Yes.
So I think one, we need to appreciate the connection and the dependability, or what we really depend on for life.
Okay.
That one, we need to have everyone on board. Secondly, we have to really catalyze locally led restoration. Locally led restoration is where we have communities taking lead. They are the landowners. They are the ones who know, what are the factors, what is contributing to this land degradation, and supporting them in terms of finance, in terms of capacity, in terms of monitoring, to be able to restore these degraded lands.
Okay.
And the third thing is also looking at what Prof is saying. The water towers. These are the key hotspots, biodiversity hotspots in this country. And if they are destroyed, then we are talking about the country being at risk in terms of Kenya is already a water stressed country, so it's going to be more. And when you talk about it being water stressed, it means the water quality and quantity is going down day by day.
Yes.
That means also a risk even for our animals. Remember some time back when the elephants were dying because of lack of water? That is what it means. You know, it's talking about polluted water. These are health issues, you know. So again, how do we do our farming? You know, we need to transform how we produce our food. You know, are we producing in a manner that is, you know, regenerating the soils, vis-a-vis really degrading them and having a lot of, you know, loss of topsoil, which is really carrying a lot of fertility. So all these things, but again, they are centered around livelihoods. So really having communities at the center of it, because at the end of the day, the more the biodiversity loss is happening, the more, you know, the livelihoods are becoming really at risk, and communities are becoming more vulnerable.
All right.
Yeah.
And, you know, let's move on to Nelson, because I really feel that you as CEO of Kijabe Environmental Volunteers have a role to play at the community level, because Caroline has just mentioned that everyone needs to be able to come together, and it just boils down to the community levels as well. And what do you think that you are doing as CEO, just some simple actions to be able to support biodiversity as individuals and of course as volunteers coming together?
Thank you so much. The first thing is to understand the community that live around these biodiversity resources that we are talking about. And from where I come from, our biggest resource is the forest. Once we understand the community, and once the community understands the kind of work that we need to do to conserve these forests and to take care of these forests, then we will be able to progress. So as the CEO, and together with the people that we work with, together with the community, some of the things that we do, number one, we do a lot of awareness creation, because we need for the community to understand what it is that surrounds them, what it is that they need to do to protect that, what, you know, what they are interacting with. Do they really understand the bird that they see every morning around their compound? What does it mean to the rest of the biodiversity? You see, an animal like bird, you know, alive like a certain plant, when you observe it in your neighborhood, what does it mean to the larger ecosystem? Sometimes it may tell you that the forest is already disturbed, the forest is being conserved. There is a lot of human, you know, activities happening in these resources, and therefore making these communities understand this will really make the life and, you know, our work very easy. Number two is about gathering resources, you know, bringing together the partners, the stakeholders, and therefore for us, we do what we call the landscape approach. Landscape approach means that we bring everybody who is involved in a certain area to take care of a certain natural resource, a certain resource, whether it is the forest, a river, you know, the soil. Do they really understand the role they play? If it is a business person, what are they doing during, you know, their day-to-day life, carrying out the business in disturbing or protecting a resource? So making them understand, bringing the resources together, and making the best we can be able to do in managing the conservation of the resources. We are also doing documentation. You know, we put together information excuse me, on what is existing, what is the status, and how can this relate to future generations. So those are some of the few things that we do as a community.
Thank you very much for that. Quite an insightful statement right there from you. And we will continue to have this conversation, but for now we need to get right into business news.